So, sir, India has pledged towards improvement in women's, children's, and adolescents' health, including mental health and well being, and is attempting to make better changes in this area. So, I wanted to know how you will invest in and prioritize the health, well being, and rights of women, children, and adolescents during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, and what will this achieve?
That's a very complex and complicated question, but let me try to answer it. You see, the welfare of women, of children, of adolescents, particularly during the times of pandemic, is a extremely challenging and complex task, and various national governments are grappling with this task. So if you look at COVID, what has COVID done in the last 11 months? It has disrupted lives across the globe. It has disrupted economies, and it has disrupted the governance systems. So whenever such a large scale disruption takes place, we should be asking ourselves the question, who is the most vulnerable group that would get most affected by such a large scale disruption? And the answer is there, staring us in the eye. The answer is obvious. The answer is that the most vulnerable group are our women, our children, and our adolescents. Cutting across, geographical boundaries, cutting across religious boundaries, cutting across race boundaries, cutting across social spectrum. If you are a woman, whether you are in, economically not so well off section, or even if you are in an economically well off section, in a generic manner, the problems that the pandemic has unleashed are the same. It's only the degree that varies, the degree of impact. So therefore, if this is the case, if this group is the most vulnerable group, therefore the energies of all national governments, the investment in terms of time and money and effort of all national governments should be on this particular group. So in that context, in India also, and in the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, we have directed our energies and we have repurposed our existing national programs towards the protection and the well-being of women, children and adolescents. We have already committed to implement a COVID-related health sector preparedness plan of $2 billion. That's a huge amount. But then we are a huge country. So we need to put our money where our mouth is. So therefore, learning from the COVID pandemic, the union government has said that over the next couple of years, we would invest $2 billion to strengthen our public health facilities. Our public health facilities in rural areas, in urban areas. Why should we strengthen these facilities? So whenever the next pandemic comes, which may be more sooner than later, we are well prepared. We are not caught off guard, and we adopt what is now popularly known as whole of the government and whole of the society approach. For example, while you are fighting the pandemic, it is not the sole responsibility of only the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to tackle the pandemic. We may require help of Ministry of Home Affairs. We may require help of Ministry of Pharmaceuticals. We may require help of Ministry of Civil Aviation. we would definitely require help of the state governments. So, whole of the government approach. Similarly, if we are asking people to adopt COVID appropriate behavior, wearing of mask, maintaining physical distance, frequent washing of hands with soap and water or with sanitizer. So this requires a buy-in from all sections of the society. They need to be informed, and once they are informed, then they will make these informed choices. So whole of the society. So therefore, whole of the government approach, whole of the society approach, and a multi-sectoral response. And all this is focused to ensure that the vulnerable lives are protected of women, of children, and of adolescents.
So there are various challenges when it comes to providing quality healthcare to all backgrounds, including geographies, gender, social groups, and that too with adequate supply. I am asking, what are the critical gaps in healthcare and social protection this will address to ensure the pledge of leave no one behind?
You see, we are the second most populous country in the world, and we are a large country, and we are a country of diverse terrain, diverse languages, and diverse challenges. So therefore, any public health intervention must ensure that no one is left behind. But it becomes that much more challenging in a country of our size and dimension. It is in this context that 2 years ago, in 2018, the Union Ministry of Health took a proposal to the Honorable Prime Minister of India. That proposal was for a scheme called Ayushman Bharat, and the scheme was eventually approved by the Union Cabinet and was launched. So what is the scheme? The scheme, Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Yojana, involves construction and operationalization of 1,50,000, that is 150,000 health and wellness centers across the country. What would these health and wellness centers do? They would provide a spectrum of 13 healthcare packages to everyone, free of cost. So this is taking healthcare to the grassroots level. So Ayushman Bharat, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, as the scheme is known, it intends to cover 500 million people. This must be the biggest universal health coverage scheme across the world. So as I was telling you, it has two parts. One is to create these 150,000 health and wellness centers in our villages. The other is to provide secondary and tertiary health care free of cost by impaneling hospitals both in the public sector and private sector. Which means that if I am a poor person, I can go to the impaneled hospital and I get health care in a cashless manner, free of cost. So while primary health care is attended to by these 150,000 health and wellness centers, out of which 47,000 have already been operationalized and remaining would be operationalized by December 2022, my secondary and tertiary healthcare needs will be attended to by those impaneled secondary and tertiary care hospitals. Huge scheme, ambitious scheme, first scheme which is a example of partnership between public sector and private sector. So the private sector also gets to play a role in ensuring that no one is left behind. This will have an impact because in India we suffer from a double disease burden. While on the one hand We have the challenges of communicable diseases. On the other hand, with the changing lifestyles, our economy, rapidly growing and expanding, we have the challenge of non-communicable diseases also. And these NCDs or non-communicable diseases are not only limited to cities, they are there in our rural areas also. So for the first time, this structure of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana would be addressing these two challenges simultaneously in an effective manner.
Which government sectors, health, education, women and child development, youth affairs and sports, labor, finance, Panchayati Raj, information and broadcasting will be involved to ensure that women, children, and adolescents can safely access health services and social protection measures?
Shakti, I just told you about the whole of the government and whole of the society approach. So my answer is that all of them will be involved. Because without involving all the stakeholders, you cannot ensure the last mile delivery. Let me, explain this by giving you a concrete example. For example, look at maternal and child health programs. So who has the mandate of running these programs? Obviously, the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, in collaboration with state governments, we run these programs that focus at maternal and child health. But to succeed in these programs, we need the cooperation of Ministry of Women and Child Development. They are a separate ministry. They look after programs related to nutrition, supplementary nutrition and micronutrient deficiency among women and among children. So without collaborating with them, our delivery will not be as effective. Then let's look at the Panchayati Raj Ministry and the Rural Development Ministry. They are responsible for women self-help groups. These are small group of women in our rural areas. They get together, they start by doing credit and thrift activities, then they transit into doing economic activities of production, and then they start discussing issues of health, nutrition, education, so on and so forth, which have an impact on their children. So therefore, these women self-help groups are utilized by us, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, to take our message forward among the villages. Similarly, the Panchayati Raj Ministry has the elected Gram Panchayats and their functionaries. So we utilize that apparatus also to strengthen the delivery of our programs. So therefore, at the end of the day, it is all ministries working together in a coordinated manner to ensure that the rights and welfare of women, children and adolescents are addressed and no one is left behind.
So above all, I want to know from you, how can we ensure better, uninterrupted, quality service delivery and make sure that everyone has access to the same?
You see, this has been a challenge not only for health services but for everyone. While we do have service delivery mechanisms, the issue of timely delivery and the issue of equity in delivery becomes important. So when we say timely delivery, that can happen only when we have the physical infrastructure that is needed to deliver a service across the country. We have adequate number of trained human resources to man that infrastructure. For example, if you have a primary health center, but if you do not have adequate number of doctors and paramedics to man it, that building is not of much use. Similarly, if you have a school in a village, but if you do not have adequate number of teachers to impart teaching, learning activity, then that school building is of no use. So therefore, infrastructure, trained human resource, the issue of equity and access are connected. For that, we need to ensure that the historical inequalities which have afflicted our societies across countries, we have this problem in India, this problem would be present to a certain extent in other countries also. So therefore, all our effort should be that those groups which have suffered from historical inequalities, they must be addressed, they must be at the focus of all our attention. And then there is a generic theme. That theme, in Hindi we call it Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means a self-reliant India. The issue of equity, the issue of access, the issue of infrastructure, the issue of trained manpower cannot be resolved if we are not self-reliant. Self-reliant in technology, self-reliant in solutions, self-reliant in governance policies. So that is the focus that should, in an overarching manner, provide direction to our efforts.
How can all communities, including young people, effectively monitor this and give their constant feedback?
You see, the role of adolescents and young people is absolutely important. Let me tell you a small story from my childhood days. I was in a day boarding school. So we used to go to school at 7 in the morning and come back home around 5:30 in the evening. And one of the activities that our school did was a youth parliament. So therefore, we were from a very young age inculcated the quality of analyzing what was happening around us and articulating our views about what was happening around us and what we thought should be done. But that was as young children. But that is a quality that we must keep on encouraging in our children today, because their feedback is absolutely important going ahead to refine our existing programs. The feedback that today in a conventional manner we get are from the government machinery. But we must know outside the government machinery, the target group, the adolescents, the children, the women who are supposed to receive benefits, what is their input? And until and unless we get that input, we cannot improve our service delivery. So that is quite important. Their role is important.
How can we continue to express our needs as adolescents and inform the programming and policies? Can meaningful youth engagement avenues be institutionalized?
Oh yes, they can be. Youth Parliament was just one example. But you see, things have changed. When we were children and today, the world has moved on. Sitting in Delhi, we can say that an enormous amount of water has passed down the Yamuna since those times. So therefore, what is happening today? Today we live in a digital age, an age of digital revolution, an age of social media. So these are the new means, apart from institutional mechanisms that the governments would put in place and have put in place. Digital media and social media must be exploited to the full by the youth of today, the adolescents of today, the children of today, to draw attention to the problems, the issues that they would want the government of the day to address. So this is a major change, and this change, I think, is for the better. There are some examples of deviant behavior on digital media and social media also, but let us not overpower the discourse by that kind of stray examples. We must utilize them in a positive manner to determine the priorities of various programs.